Hi, this is Dee with University of San Diego Career Development Center. Welcome to Alumni Zoom Trips, a series of pre-recorded interviews with USD alumni experts about how to navigate the long-term impact of COVID-19 on our communities and workplaces. This program is co-hosted with the Office of Alumni Relations. Morgan Smith is an author, speaker, and financial advisor. He has trained as a Buddhist monk and conducted combat operations as an F-14 Tomcat naval flight officer. He holds a BA in computer science and an international MBA from USD. He's also a certified financial planner. As an assistant professor of naval science at the University of San Diego, he's taught engineering and leadership and management to university students. He works with many clients on intergenerational financial issues, and today he will share his insights on how to care for our aging or sick parents in this time of social distancing and offer helpful tips for financial planning for our students on the job market. Morgan, it's wonderful to virtually meet you this morning. How are you?
I'm doing fine, Dee. Great to meet you as well.
So, can you share a little bit more about your fascinating background?
Well, let's put it this way. When I decided to make a decision to actually go to college, it's probably the best news my dad ever heard. And I had thought about, I grew up in Coronado. I thought about going someplace else, but um, I decided, my dad said he would help me with college, but I said, you know what, I'd prefer to not put that burden on him. And so I went for an NROTC scholarship at the University of San Diego, was able to live at home, did that, graduated with computer science undergrad, went down to flight school, flew out in the Navy out here at Miramar, and was able, after my flying tours, was able to come back to the University of San Diego and teach and get my master's of international business or international MBA. So I was really, really fortunate and really going back to USD a second time. Let me put it this way: I appreciated it that much more,
Mhm.
and so it's been a great way to be around people to learn values, and so that was kind of the genesis of where I
Mhm.
am.
Wonderful. And how would you say that your USD degree has prepared you for your current work in financial planning and wealth management?
Well, on the whole, it's not the degree itself; it's the people and the value system up at
Mhm.
the University of San Diego. I think as I go through life, that's the most important thing that stayed with me. I just, great professors, great people, great faculty, and just a great student body as well. And that kind of thing really sticks to you, and it makes you a better person. And also, I was a computer science undergrad, but being mandated to take courses like religious studies and biomedical ethics really expands your understanding of the human condition. And that's really important in life. And obviously, working with clients. Um, from my undergrad computer science, I think, just working with computer systems and knowing logic and being able to tap into logic is really important. But you have to have the other side of your brain as well. But and then getting my MBA, obviously, the financial
Mhm.
fundamentals there. I think that's good in whatever kind of business you're going to be in. And just kind of it reminds me. There was a Sister Fury used to be at the University of San Diego when I was there, and I remember specifically her telling me she got a law degree. She never used it, but it was a great education. I feel like an MBA, no matter what you do, is going to be a great education for you.
Thank you so much for that. And how would you say COVID-19 is driving new financial planning business currently?
Well, there's two sides to that. On the client side, uh, change and movement creates both risk and opportunities.
Mhm.
And we're seeing that in spades right now with a lot of volatility in the economy and challenges. Um, and I think what's really happening is clients are living this hypothetical concepts that we talked about and really seeing the resiliency of their financial plans. On the advisor side, it's really, I think people are really now learning the true nature of the employee owner relationship. And so I think things are really being learned in practice as opposed to hypothetically
Hmm.
from both the client side and the advisor side.
Hmm. And what would your advice be to students and alumni who are interested in breaking into CFP careers?
So I think the first thing I would look at is really understand what the requirements are.
Hmm.
And the best way to do that is to go to cfp.net.
Hmm.
And essentially, there are educational requirements.
Hmm.
And I did mine at a place called the College for Financial Planning. I did it online. It just fit well with my lifestyle then. But there's universities and institutions that offer that education piece. There's a examination piece to that. So that education will prepare you for the exam, and it's pretty rigorous. And then there's the experience aspect of it, which you have to have a certain amount of experience, either working directly with clients, working on financial planning, or teaching. So understand what the requirements are. Best place to do that is cfp.net.
Awesome. I know it's a pretty challenging exam. Were you able to pass during the sort of the first try? I know there are three rounds of it, but
Yeah, so apparently it's changed a little bit. When I did it, it was a 2-day exam,
hmm.
and I actually took a preparatory class for the exam.
Hmm.
And it was one of the most, I've taken a lot of hard exams, and there was a lot of pressure because you're not just a student usually at this point. You've got other things going on with your life, work, family.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And so, yeah, I passed it the first time, thankfully. And honestly, I told myself when I left the exam room, I go, if I didn't pass, then it wasn't meant for me. I'm not going to do it again.
There you go. Good for you. And what are the keys to success in financial management?
Um, a lot of the keys for success really depend on understanding yourself. So you've got to know what what you want in life. But really, you can break it down to some simple concepts. You've got to have the technical skills. So you have to understand investment theory.
Mhm.
You have to have perspective as well, because you're
Mhm.
going to need to be talking to people about perspective and what's going on now, and that's history. So know your history. You've got to have psychological skills. You have to understand what makes people successful, to look into yourself and
Mhm.
how you are going to face those challenges, and also what's holding back your clients and being able to
Mhm.
peel back the onion with your clients, which really kind of goes into what I call emotional intelligence and
Mhm.
insight, being able to peel back the onion for the client and what's going on with them and what's really driving their decisions. Because although we think most of our decisions are made logically, they're actually driven by emotion. Again, clarify your values. And at the end of the day, be nice, because
Mhm.
people like to help people they like, and they like to work with people they like.
Thanks so much for those insights, Morgan. And what pieces of student loan advice can you share with our students who are interested in paying off their loans?
Well, first off, try and minimize
Hmm.
the need for student loans, and there's ways to do that, but those ways may not be for anybody. For example, I was fortunate enough to get a NROTC scholarship, and my school is paid for. If that is not your cup of tea, then you may not have those options. So there are obviously, students are probably more educated than me on grants and scholarships and things like that, but get smart on that. Once you're out of school and you're faced with paying back the debt, uh, look at your lifestyle, and when you create a budget, the first line item on your budget should be your debt.
Hmm.
So allocate your budget towards your debt, and then you can start looking at, okay, what's left over. That's what I have for my living expenses and cars and things like that. And realize that right now, just so you know, there's some student loan payments and interest accruals are waived until September 30th of 2020 based on the CARES Act. But
Mm.
those are some of the things I've been thinking about lately for
Okay.
students.
Are there certain jobs or companies that you're familiar with that do offer loan forgiveness?
Yeah, most of those jobs
Mhm.
come into the world of either government or federal jobs. So there's a lot of federal agencies out there
Mhm.
where, depending on a certain amount of qualification, they will forgive your student loans. So
Mhm.
if you're
Mhm.
really interested in getting rid of those student loans up front, look at some federal
Seeking a
jobs and
federal
federal
career.
agencies.
Mhm.
Yes. I know the Association for Medical Doctors have a loan assistance program. Um, the military specifically, for example, I think the Navy's got a $45,000 uh, grant on top of the residency stipend they give you
Mhm.
to help you with your debt. Uh, Nurse Corps in the Army, and outside of that, there's organizations like the AmeriCorps, the Peace Corps, and things like that.
Okay. And now I know that you have a relatively new book out, right? Generation Squeezed. Can you tell our listeners a little bit more about your book, and then we'll from there we'll go into our topic of how to care for our aging or sick parents.
Right. So I obviously I've been, well, maybe not obviously, but I've been working with clients on intergenerational issues financially
Mhm.
for 15 years. And in recent years, went through and was a caretaker and went through being a caretaker and having my father pass away from dementia and my mom pass away from lung cancer. And so I was very involved with all the practical aspects of that, just dealing with issues like bills and
Mhm.
simple things like bills and taking care of the house and helping them with daily living activities to settling the estate. And as I was going through this, I was running into a whole bunch of people that were going through the same thing, and they were lost, maybe more so than I. And there's a lot of issues that can arise there. And what I realized was, if you don't have some idea of the challenges you're going to face, both personally and emotionally, and just taking care of your parents, it has the possibility of really kind of destroying your life.
Mhm.
People have pressures on them with their families, with their work. You add on top of that, the pressures that people have with taking care of their parents and the issues there. It can really squeeze their
Mhm.
life to the breaking point. Thus, the title of the book, Generation Squeezed.
Okay.
So that's how I came about to write books. I thought I
Mhm.
could pass on some pearls I learned so people could learn themselves.
Okay. Well, based on your personal experiences and the insights that you share in your book, what are the 5 things that we can do to help our aging or sick parents, particularly during this time of social distancing? And again, going back to what you just said, how can we do this without sacrificing our education and our careers?
So one of the things that I really emphasize even before this, uh, I guess you call it crisis with the coronavirus, are family meetings,
Mhm.
and just merely due to the fact that oftentimes families are spread apart geographically,
Mhm.
try virtual family meetings with your family members and get together and just start communicating. The end goal from a purely financial standpoint is to start talking about, okay, who's going to take over the business? How do we settle the estate? Who's going to be the trustee and things like that? But start off with, hey, how you doing? What kind of problems are there? And provide support. So virtual family meetings,
Mhm.
I think, are really important. Get the communication lines of communication open. Another simple thing you can do is get a password manager and make sure you have access to that for your parent who may be slipping in their memory or something like that. Because if there's an issue that comes up with the bank or their gas bill or something needs to be paid, you can take care of that right away. It's really frustrating if you don't have access to those accounts. Try and get a financial portal together. We have financial portals at my advisory firm, and where clients can see everything. So it's, instead of having to look in multiple places, have things in a consolidated place. I think people would, in the past, maybe do this in a folder. But if you can do that where you can get online in the convenience of your home, that's great.
Is there a particular
Um,
vendor that you would recommend or a platform?
well, On my website, Gen Squeezed,
Mm-hmm.
GenSqueezed, I've got a resources tab there, and I've got a listing of the top 20 password managers out there. I think it's by Consumer Reports, but I happen to use Keeper Security, and that allowed me to share some of these folders with a bill keeper and a bill payer and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really convenient.
Mm-hmm.
And lastly, I just say if your parents are in that phase where they're starting to decline, you really need to ensure that you've got powers of attorney in place. It's really important having durable power of attorneys in place, not only for medical and things like that for decision making, but for financial. So one of the things that can happen is you may find out that your your mom or dad got a notice in the mail saying something wasn't paid, or you want to change the service or cut off a service.
Mm-hmm.
And you call the company and say, well, hey, look, it's okay. She's not available now. My mom's not available to talk to you, but I'm her son. Well, if they don't have some kind of power of attorney on file already, there that the person can look at, it's going to take a lot of time to get things done. So look at getting those in place as well.
Thanks for those tips, Morgan. And how can we practice self care and manage our own emotional energy as we're caring for our aging parents while juggling the responsibility of raising our own families?
Well, I think this is one of the most important things to think about, and a lot of people talking about the issues I'm talking about don't address this idea of keeping yourself emotionally, spiritually, and psychologically sound. Because if you're a mess, you're not going to be able to help somebody. And it really hit me when I used to go in and visit my father, who had dementia, and we were very close, really good friend. And when I went in there, it was a very emotionally sad thing to do because this person who was such a strong support and man for me in my life was really like he wasn't there anymore. So it's really sad. So one of the things I turned to through the ex- the the practice, my Buddhist practice, was metta meditation, and
Mm-hmm.
that's a meditation of loving kindness and compassion, where you think about yourself and you kind of imbue yourself with this compassion and loving kindness, and you do that towards yourself. You do it towards a spiritual mentor.
Mm-hmm.
You do it to a family member, someone who's close to you with you. You do it to some people that are kind of neutral to you. And a very powerful thing is you do it with somebody that you've been having a problem with. And that's maybe a discussion for another time. The point being is that meta meditation, that meditation of compassion and loving kindness, is a very, very powerful way to strengthen your mind, give your mind resiliency, and just recharge the batteries. And you can really take that concept within whatever spiritual practice you go to, whether it's Christianity or anything else.
Thank you. And what are your top three strategies that our listeners should consider for their own finances and that of their aging parents?
So really the first thing is have some cash reserves. And typically depending on if parents or spouses are both working or not, it can range anywhere from 3 to 12 months. So this is cash you've got set aside in case of an emergency. Once you have that cash reserve set aside, then you can start looking at deploying cash in other ways. And I think right now during the coronavirus crisis, the most important thing for all of us, whether it be our families or
Mhm.
our businesses, it's a cash flow issue. And those businesses and families that are going to be that maybe lost their job or they can't pay their employees, they're really understanding the importance of cash reserves. The second point is really for the elderly. I think there's a conventional wisdom out there that the elderly need to automatically get more conservative within their portfolios, maybe have more bonds, and that may not necessarily be wrong, but it's not necessarily the case. So I'll just throw that out there without getting into the technical details of that too much. And the third point is really you have to have a plan and stick to it and update that plan. So having a really robust planning tool
Mhm.
and an advisor who can ensure you don't jump off the cliff when things get rough. Those are three good tips to have uh, for
Thank
your
you.
financial future.
Okay, those are very helpful. And what is something that you've learned very late in life but wish you knew earlier?
Well, as I'm a father here with a 6-year-old son, I think really put some thought into what you want your life to be like.
Mhm.
And if you really want to have a family, r- put more thought into how you will financially sustain that vision. Because it's relatively easy when you're single and, you could live in a closet if you wanted to. And, but when you have a family, things get a little more serious, and you look in your son or your daughter's eyes and you say, gosh, I want them to have a good life.
Mhm.
You've got to have some way of providing that a way of life from a financial standpoint. And there's a whole bunch of ways to do it these days.
Mhm.
But that's one thing I, I would really consider to think about.
Thanks, Morgan. And on a final note, given that a lot of our graduating seniors are on the job market, what is the best career advice that you have received that you think could help our students who are trying to really navigate through this uncertain job search market?
Well, again, I didn't really get much advice, so I had to learn it my own. Some of the things I've learned, one is there's a difference between being an employee and having equity in a firm, and that's really important. So you want to create something that has a value at the end of your 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 time of employment. As an employee, generally you work, you earn a salary, and then when you're done, you're done.
Mhm.
As if you have equity ownership in some kind of business, then you can look at some kind of sale of the business and earn some money for your retirement in that equity. Another way to do that is find a job where you it creates a pension for you. So there's some kind of pension plan or pension system. So you've got to think about that end game, and I think equity versus ownership, and on one side, and some kind of pension on the other side is is important. And look at the end of the day, realize that uh, people most likely aren't going to want to work with folks that they don't like.
Mhm.
And I think there's a real value to that. And I try and teach my kid that, and I try and teach my kid to be a good person because he'll get more help and it'll create more opportunities for him. And finally, I'd say, don't let your ego get in your way. Your first job is not going to be your last job, and you can't just go from A directly to Z. And it takes hard work
Takes hard
and
work. It takes
discipline.
time.
Yes.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for sharing your time and insights with us today. This has been an incredibly enjoyable and helpful conversation. And for our students and alumni out there, please do connect with us over Team. USD's mentoring and networking platform is university wide, exclusive to USD, where you'll be able to contact many alumni mentors, including Morgan Smith. Morgan, thank you again, and I hope that you have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you, Dee. Take care. Stay healthy
Thank you.
and happy.